Nama Shreshtam Manu Api Sachiputram Atra Swarupam Rupam Tasya Grajam Urupurim Maturim Gostavatam Radhakundam Girivaram Aho Radhika Madhavasam Prapto Yasya Pratita Kripaya Shri Gurum Tam Natosmi Jai Jai Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Reading from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila, chapter 24, Sanatan Shiksha, explanations of the Atmaram verse. So, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is slowly winding up his instructions to Sanatana Goswami, known as Sanatan Shiksha. And he's done so by repeating and expanding upon his explanation of the famous Atmaram verse, which he delivered to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. So, at the behest of Sanatana Goswami, after delivering a further comprehensive revelation of Bhakti Tattva, he has now, at the request of Sanatana Goswami, further elaborated on this Atmaram verse, the second of three elaborations in the Madhya Lila. And in the course of that, he has told the story of Mrigarhi the hunter, the purification of Mrigarhi the hunter, as a famous instance of the power of sadhusanga, where someone from a very degraded position can be elevated to that of a very exalted position through exposure to an exalted person, through the power of sadhusanga. Of course, there must be two factors in operation. One must be the power of the devotee. In other words, they must be a genuine, elevated Vaishnava, and the receptivity of the person in need of purification. They must be prepared to make a certain amount of surrender. They must be ready to face the challenge. They must have a desire to change. No one is going to force you to change. All jiva souls are endowed with free will. So regardless of how pure the devotee may be, the jiva can still block off the flow of spiritual energy that is available to them in the association of that person. So first of all, the devotee needs to be a proper devotee, and the person needs to be ready to accept the kripa, karuna, anugraha, whatever word you want to use, the mercy of the devotee. And in the case of Mrigarhi, we see that Narad tested him in this regard. So Narad told him, now you take your bow and you break it. At one point in their discussion, Narad said to Mrigarhi, now you take your bow and you break it. Now Mrigarhi was a hunter. Mrigarhi. Mriga means Mriga is a deer. So he's primarily a deer hunter. And for a deer hunter, a bow and arrow is essential. How else do you catch a deer? So it is the tool of his trade. And bows were very treasured instruments in cultures that used those bows for hunting and for warfare, etc. They were products of high artisanship, often very rare. A good quality bow was often very rare, could last a long time, worth a lot of money. And also what other value it might have, whatever. Personal value. So it is like Narad telling him to smash something that is very important and precious to him. So he's being tested. Narad has the capacity to deliver spiritual grace, spiritual mercy. But does Mrigarhi have the capacity to accept it? And so Narad is prompting him in this regard, saying, I've come to help you out of your sadistic condition, because essentially is very sadistic, to kill an animal, or to half kill it. In other words, to incapacitate the animal and let it die slowly, intentionally, watching it, obtaining some kind of perverse pleasure from that. It's torture. So the sadistic pleasure of torturing an animal is very low. Narada Muni has come to lift him out of that. But he's challenging him, are you ready to accept this change? You need to make some kind of, you need to show on your part, you need to make some effort to surrender. You need to participate in this transaction. So he says, smash your bow. And Mrigarhi protests. How can I do this? Or he objects. This bow is my livelihood. Without this bow, I starve. And Narad says, smash your bow. I will look after you. So it's a challenge of faith. It's a test of faith. It's Mrigarhi having to make a certain amount of sacrifice, and that sacrifice is based on faith. In the song we sing, Goptrit Vivarana, Avasya Rakshibe Krishna. These things are embracing the protection of the Lord and confidence in the guardianship, or in whatever, interchangeable terms. And embracing the guardianship, confidence in the Lord's protection. And that is faith. That must be based on faith. Without faith, you cannot have either of those items. So Narada is testing Mrigarhi, and Mrigarhi, after some initial objection, he smashes his bow, and the mercy is delivered like that. He's freed from his despicable condition and the horrendous karmas that he is generating for himself. He's freed from all of that. And when he is revisited at a later date by Narada Muni and his friend Parvata Muni, then he displays his transformation in that he is not even prepared to hurt an ant. In the course of discharging his service, which in this case is paying his dandavat to Narada Muni and his friend, to his guru, he is not even prepared to squash an ant, so he's gently sweeping the ants off the floor before he is prostrating himself. And Narada Muni is very pleased, and he says to his friend Parvat, just look at the transformation. Just look at the transformation. Behold. And Mahaprabhu recounts this to Sanatana Goswami to say, as an illustration of the power of the devotee to transform one from the very pits of material perversity and elevate them to the level of a saint quite rapidly if those two conditions are met. Someone is prepared to make that change. It is there, as Gurudev says, I can help my disciples, but they must be prepared for the speed of the journey. They must be prepared to make that change themselves, participate. Guru Maharaj gives the example of the split in the Ramanuja Sampradaya of South India. And that at one time there was an ideological split, and it split into, I forget the terms, Vadikaya, and there's another group, two groups, the other one starts with T. And they split along ideological, theological lines. One of them professing that all you needed to do was be like the kitten, and which was picked up in the jaws of the mother cat and carried. So the mother cat being God and the kitten being the jiva soul. All you need to do is surrender, and then you will be taken care of. And the other one is that analogous to the monkey, which is also carried by the mother but needs to cling on. So there needs to be, and Gurudev said, our conception is like that of the monkey analogy, where there is some effort required. You must also make that effort if you want to experience transformation in your life. You must be prepared to do what is necessary to be carried by the mother in this analogy, by God or by Guru, etc. So it's important to realize that just as we have had the power to put ourselves in certain situations, so we have the power to take ourselves out of such situations. And of course that removal of such a situation, its spiritual transformation and growth, can be quite rapid if one is in contact with an elevated Vaishnav, such as Gurudev, or in the case of Mrigari, such as Narada Muni. So this is the whole point being made by Mahaprabhu in his instructions to Sanatana Goswami at that point of the Sanatana Shiksha. So we'll continue from text 317. Yesterday we read the famous verse, Aham vedmi sukho veti, vyaso veti na vetiva, bhaktya bhagavatam grahyam, nabuddhya nacha tikaya, where it is said, Lord Shiva, this is Lord Shiva saying, I know the meaning of the Bhagavatam. And Sukadeva Goswami, the son of Vyasadeva, he also knows. Vyasadeva himself, he may or may not know the meaning of the Bhagavatam. On the whole, Srimad Bhagavatam, pure Purana, can be learned only through devotional service. So that's the key. It cannot be learned by any academic approach or any approach of the intellect. It can only be learned by an approach which is heart-based. So, by devotional service, not by intelligence, material intelligence, speculative methods, or imaginary commentaries. And yesterday we were explaining how this verse is from an incident where the followers of Shankaracharya in Varanasi, they took the Srimad Bhagavatam commentary of Sridhar Swami, 13th century Saint Sridhar Swami, to Lord Shiva to get his approval or disapproval on whether it was authentic or bogus, the commentary, because they were unsure of the commentary due to its theistic flavor. It was not a Mayavad commentary, so it was not in the line of Shankaracharya. Anyway, we were talking about this yesterday. Cut a long story short, it was given the approval of Lord Shiva, and in the course of that approval, this verse was manifest, expressing how the Bhagavatam can only be approached through devotional service. So the commentary, of course, is extremely apt. In fact, it is the only appropriate commentary.
You don't need to recount the details, but what was the means which Lord Shiva gave his approval? In what form did it manifest?
So it manifests in this sloka, the revelation of this sloka. I'm not exactly sure of the details, what if there was some physical expression or what have you. But the gist is that it was given approval. And how the sloka was manifest, I mean the exact who heard it, when they heard it, whether it was composed and written on a piece of paper or left or what have you. I even forget the name of the temple, but what is the famous Shiva temple in Varanasi? We will have all heard of the name, because Varanasi is a Shiva's city. The famous Vishnu temple, of course, is Bindu Madhav, where Rupa Goswami first sees Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, composes the verse Namo Mahabodhanaya. The famous Lord Shiva temple, it was that temple. There are probably many Shiva temples in Varanasi, but there's one very famous one, and this is where the Bhagavatam was taken to as a litmus test by Lord Shiva, to Lord Shiva himself, as the ultimate litmus test, and it passed. This was the commentary of Sridhar Maharaj and Sridhar Swami. And we see that Sridhar Swami was greatly, greatly appreciated by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, his commentary. Even to the point where we read in the Antilila of, I forget the exact chapter of Chaitanya Charitamrita, where Ballabhacharya comes from Vrindavan to visit Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Jagannath Puri. And he has recently completed his own commentary of Bhagavatam. And he's kind of handing it out, looking for feedback or looking for appreciation. And Mahaprabhu kind of like turns his nose up at it. He's like, not so interested. And Vallabha is saying something like, well, I've done another commentary and I feel it even surpasses that of Sridhar Swami. And Mahaprabhu says, someone who rejects their Swami is a prostitute. That's what Mahaprabhu says to Vallabhacharya. And this means that it's in reference, he's alluding to the dual use of the word Swami here. Swami can also mean a husband. So he's saying that a woman who kind of rejects her husband and goes with other men is like it's like the nature of a prostitute. And so he's saying to Vallabhacharya that you reject the previous spiritual authorities and concoct your own thing, you're like ideologically you're a prostitute. Jai Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu. The importance of obeyance and respect and keeping the internal chastity to those who have given revelation, spiritual revelation, in times of your previous acharjas. So that Sridhar Swami, who was called by Jiva Goswami, called that Sridhar Swami, and this is interesting, he called him Bhakti Ekarakshak. Bhakti Ekarakshak, the famous Bhagavatam commentator. And when Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur gave our Param Gurudev his sannyas name, what did he call him? Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar. Gave him the name Sridhar, but also Bhakti Rakshak.
Sorry, who gave that previous name?
Jiva Goswami.
Who?
In his commentary, he calls Sridhar Swami Bhakti Eka Rakshak.
One.
The one and only guardian.
Yeah. Of devotion. So, then, sorry?
No, it's very powerful. We have that connection to pure devotion.
It's interesting. I'm hoping to come across some recorded where it might be elaborated upon by Gurudev or Guru Maharaj. It's mentioned by Guru Maharaj himself, but it's not elaborated upon. So, Mahaprabhu is explaining the different meanings of the Atmaram verse. And Sanatana Goswami then says, Shakshat Ishwara Tumi Brajendra Nandan Tomara Nishvase Sarva Veda Pravartan. Sanatana Goswami said, My dear Lord, you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, the son of Maharaj Nanda. All the Vedic literatures are vibrated through your breathing. Tumi Vakta Bhagavatera Tumi Jana Artha Tomavina Anya Janite Nahika Samartha. My dear Lord, you are the original speaker of the Bhagavatam. You therefore know its real import. But for you, no one can understand the confidential meaning of Srimad Bhagavatam. Prabhu kahe kene kara armara stavana bhagavatera swarupa kene nakara vicharana. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu replied, Why are you glorifying me personally? You should understand the transcendental position of Srimad Bhagavatam. Why don't you consider this important? Krishna Tulya Bhagavat Vibhu Sarva Shraya Prati Sloke Prati Akshare Nana Artha Kaya. Srimad Bhagavatam is as great as Krishna, the Supreme Lord and shelter of everything. In each and every verse of Srimad Bhagavatam and in each and every syllable, there are various meanings. Prashno Tare Bhagavate Karyache Nirdara Yanhara Shravane Loke Lage Chamatkara. The form of Srimad Bhagavatam is given in questions and answers. Thus, the conclusion is established. By hearing these questions and answers, one is highly astonished. Bruhi Yogeshvare Krishne Brahmanye Dharma Varmani Svam Kashtam Adhunu Peti Dharma Kam Sharanam Gata. Now that Sri Krishna, the Absolute Truth, the Master of all mystic powers, has departed for his own abode, please tell us by whom religious principles are presently protected. And Purport says, this verse from Srimad Bhagavatam 1.1.23 was a question raised by all the sages who were headed by Shonak. This question put before the great devotee Suta Goswami is the foremost of the 6 questions raised. The answer to this important question is given in the next verse from Srimad Bhagavatam. Krishne svadamo pagate dharma jnanadhibhi saha kalo nashta drisham esha puranarko duno ditaha. After Lord Krishna departed for his abode, along with religious principles and transcendental knowledge, this Purana, Srimad Bhagavatam, has arisen like the sun in this age of Kali to enlighten those who have no spiritual wisdom. E mata kahilon eka slokera vyakyana vatulera pralapa kari ke kare pramana. In this way, like a madman, I have explained the meaning of just one verse. I do not know who will take this as evidence. So the point Mahaprabhu is making here is that although he's given quite a comprehensive and genius level explanation of the Atmaram verse, he's saying that all verses in the Bhagavatam, they're filled with they are filled with multiple meanings. Each verse has various shades of interpretation and meaning. And he says, not just each verse, but each syllable can be broken down, can be, parsed. It's like to dissect something and find various meanings in its components, the arrangement of its components. Where is it? Krishna Tulya Bhagavat Vibhu Sarvashraya Prati Sloke Prati Akshare Nana Artakaya. Srimad Bhagavatam is as great as Krishna, the Supreme Lord. Each and every verse of Bhagavatam, and in each and every syllable, there are various meanings. Nana Artakaya. Multiple purports. So, Mahaprabhu is making this point to Sanatana Goswami. He says, and like in a trance, as a madman, I have just explained just one verse. He says, but you can take this as evidence. So who will accept this as evidence? Amahena yeba keha vatulahaya edriste bhagavatera arta janaya. If one becomes like a madman, if one becomes a madman like me, he may also understand the meaning of Srimad Bhagavatam by this process. Puna sanatan kahe yudi dui kare Prabhu agya dila Vaishnav smriti karibare. Folding his hands, Sanatana Goswami said, My Lord, you have ordered me to write a directory about the activities of Vaishnavas. Muni nicha jati kichu najanon achara mohai te kaiche hai haya smriti parachara. I am a most low-born person. I have no knowledge about good behavior. How is it possible for me to write authorized directions about Vaishnav activities? So Mahaprabhu here, I believe, has asked, the general instruction of Mahaprabhu to the Goswamis is multifold, but generally categorized into 4 categories. One is to codify the bhakti theology and philosophy, to put it on paper in books. That's one instruction. Number two is to establish deity worship and temples in Vrindavan. Number three is to locate and rejuvenate the various places of Krishna Lila in Brajamandala. And number four is what?
Spread the teachings, maybe?
Pretty sure there's a fourth one.
That's a homework.
Yeah, I have to look that up. Sometimes I get mixed up Mahaprabhu's four instructions to Jagadananda when Jagadananda was finally allowed to go to Vrindavan. Mahaprabhu didn't really want him to go, but he was finally allowed to go, and he gave him four instructions, right? Stay under Sanatan Goswami, or as Rupa and Sanatan. Stay under their guidance. Don't walk up onto Govardhan Hill to see the Gopal deity, which at that time was in a temple. Madhavendra Puri's deity on the hill. He said, don't walk on the hill. Don't fraternize too much with the locals. They have their own conceptions and customs. They won't be helpful to you. Don't mix with the locals. In that sense, not that not that you disrespect anyone, but don't mix with them for your spiritual sadhana practices or anything. And four, don't stay too long. Don't go and start living there and become complacent with the holy dham. That won't be beneficial for you either. So Jagadananda followed all of those four directives of Mahaprabhu when he visited. So maybe there's only 3 directives that were given to the Goswamis, but I'm pretty sure there are 4. If there is a 4th one, it escapes me right now. I have to look it up. Sorry?
One thing is to write books and the other one is to...
Yeah, that's true. That could be done through initiation, but it doesn't. It doesn't ring true as like the 4th one. Establish temples, recover the lost holy places, and of course put all of the Mahaprabhu's teachings, Mahaprabhu's conception, in writing, to codify it, to organize it on paper.
And you mentioned something about Brajamandal?
Yeah, to locate the various places of Krishna Lila, the historic sites.
Is that what Brajamandal means?
Well, mandala means the diagram, and it's just like the area of Braja. Brajamandal just means the geographic area of Braja,
Okay.
Krishna's pastimes.
And the Vrindavan...
Yeah. So that's what they did. Like we could see how Radhakund, Shamakund was developed, and other places, Keshigat, Bamsigat, a place of Krishna's rasa dance. All of these places were rejuvenated by the Goswamis in the decades following Mahaprabhu's departure, or just in the decades following their arrival. During their time in Vrindavan, during the 16th century, 1500s, they built all the temples in that time.
Famous deities.
Yes, all the famous deities. Joy. Yeah, all the famous temples and deities, 7 chief ones. All the Goswamis had their own personal deities, and temples were built for those deities. Excepting, I believe, Raghunath Bhatta Goswami. Raghunath Bhatta did not have his own deities with temple. All the others do. Jiva Goswami's Radha Damodar, Rupa Goswami Radha Govinda, Radha Madan Mohan Sanatan Goswami. Gopal Bhatta is Radha Raman, and Raghunath Das Goswami is Radha Gopinath. But Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, there's no list. It's not listed. If it's not known, or it's believed he didn't have Well, there's at least no temple built, no famous deities in Raghunath, but he was engaged in reading the Bhagavatam and other services in Vrindavan. But anyway, back to the point. So some instructions, we'll look up of whether there was a fourth instruction given to the Goswamis. I'm unsure right now. But let's just finish this one quickly and then get on to that question. Is that these were the general instructions given to the Goswamis, and specifically inside of that, Mahaprabhu here has asked Sanatan to write a code of conduct, like an etiquette code, a guide, a manual for Vaishnav conduct and custom, and that was done, and it's known as the Hari Bhakti Vilas. So it's being talked about here in these verses. Yeah, what were we going to say?
One of the 4 instructions to Jagadananda about not staying too long in a place of pilgrimage like Vrindavan.
Well, specifically Vrindavan. It wasn't a generic thing. It was specific to Vrindavan.
Yeah, there's a reference to staying in any place of pilgrimage either 3 days or 3 years, not more or less. Is that something that you can reference?
Well, I know with a sannyasi, someone who's taken a vow of renunciation, that there's some stricture that they're not to spend more than 3 days in any one location. Because you spend time in a place, you get comfortable, you develop relationships with the people there. You begin to think about, you begin to get attached to whatever comforts the environment will offer. And all of these things are antithetical to a sannyasi's renunciation. They'll begin to corrode the renunciation. They'll make friends with the locals there, perhaps, whatever the case may be. So it said, if you keep on moving, what is that old saying? A rolling stone gathers no moss, right? So it's the whole idea of it. If the sannyasi is to keep on moving, they can't form these attachments and develop emotional bonds with any location or any person in any one location. So there's the idea of it's just a protective mechanism. And of course we have the opposite of that, where Gadadhar Pandit, he takes Ketra Sannyas, which is more rare. It's not typical sannyas. It's not a Ketra Sannyas is not a sannyas ceremony as such. It's just a vow. So it's known, but because of its nature, it's also known as sannyas. So it's a vow
A vow or instruction?
It's a vow.
Vow of what?
It's a vow of renunciation, which in part entails staying in one location.
Okay.
Which is the opposite of the other sannyas vow, which actually should entail constant traveling. Now they both have in common the typical features of sannyas, which is general renunciation from sensuality of all kinds. But the other feature is one is supposed to travel, and if it's Ketra sannyas, it's the opposite, you stay in one place. But that's very rare. The standard sannyas, in the vast majority of cases, is that one is expected to keep on moving, travelling and preaching. And Siddhanta Saraswati saw the same thing. Guru Maharaj talks about sannyasis. He says generally sannyasis, they move around and they preach. That's their job. The Paramahansa Babajis, which is actually above sannyas, they their function is a little different. But sannyas function is generally to travel and preach, or to preach. But, all of these things are secondary to keeping the inner spirit of sannyas. So someone can travel and do a lot of traveling and preaching, but if they're attached to various items of the world, then, they're going to be inferior to someone who may be detached, but staying in one place or not following to the letter the secondary rules of sannyas. So it all, the principle of the sannyas, the spirit, needs to be understood. And excessive attention given to the rules is not so much helpful if it detracts from the spirit, not vice versa. So in terms of particular time periods, like 3 days or 3 years, it's important to understand the reasoning behind such specific values, time values, 3 days or 3 years. But I mean, if you could find the scriptural reference, then we could see the context in which it's given, understand it. But it does apply to sannyas. In terms of most people visiting a pilgrimage place, the idea to visit is that you are to meet with the sadhus that are dwelling in such a pilgrimage place. And where is it said? Doesn't come to me right now, but when Krishna is describing the glories of his devotees, he says that even they are the ones that purify the places of pilgrimage. So it is, the important factor is the devotees, the Vaishnavas, the sadhus that visit those places of pilgrimage. They themselves may be there, so a common devotee will go there to connect with them for sangha. But they also purify those places. So there is a sense of purity there, with the devotees having congregated and visited. So there is a general purity, general atmosphere of purity in these holy places due to the purifying effect of exalted devotees visiting or living there. And then there's also the opportunity of meeting such devotees personally. So that's the whole idea of visiting a place of pilgrimage. And if you go and there's advanced devotees there and you say, I'm only staying 3 days because that's apparently I saw that in a sloka somewhere, and you leave, you're missing the whole spirit of it. So when it comes to trying to understand why they say 3 days and then 3 years, if you understand the principle behind it, you can understand the reasoning. If you understand the reasoning, you understand the principle, then you can work with that rather than trying to apply literally to the letter. It doesn't always work. The literal instruction is it's premised on a principle, and it's that principle that needs to be understood. And then you can understand how and where to apply, where that literal injunction can be modified and where it should be applied literally. It's a concept known as niyamagraha, how the rules should be literally applied, and how liberal you can be in bending the rules, so to speak, when it is appropriate to do so and when it's not. It's known as niyamagraha. Agraha means too much eagerness to follow things absolutely to the letter. And agraha means too whimsically rejecting the rules, too liberal, not giving too much attention to the rules. So there needs to be a balance. And that balance is struck appropriately when you understand the principle behind why the rules are made, on which the rules are based. Then you can know when and where to appropriately apply such principle, such rules. Niyamagraha. Atyahara prayasascha prajalpa niyamagraha. Rupa Goswami, 2nd verse, Upadeshamrita. Anyway, where are we here? So, they're talking about Sanatana Goswami's instruction, or Mahaprabhu's instruction to Sanatana Goswami to write this literature. And Sanatana Goswami says, I am a low-born person. I have no knowledge of good behavior. How is it possible for me to write authorized directions about Vaishnava activities? Sutrakare disha yare karaha upadesh, apane karaha yare hridaye pravesh. Sanatana Goswami then requested the Lord, please personally tell me how I can write this difficult book about Vaishnava behavior. Please manifest yourself in my heart. So we'll finish there. We see the same process taking place with both Rupa and Goswami, with both Rupa and Sanatana Goswamis, where Mahaprabhu is imparting Shakti into their hearts, imparting spiritual energy into their hearts. And empowering them to represent Mahaprabhu's teachings. Not just represent them, but also elaborate upon them. And put it all on paper for our benefit. So read a sub-chapter from Revealed Truth by Srila Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj. This chapter is on Mahaprabhu's mood of devotion, and the last few sub-chapters have been on chanting the holy name, the desired mood and attitude, process for chanting the holy name so that it will bear fruit. So it's not just mindless chanting. And of course that means avoiding offences, which is the title of this sub-chapter, Avoiding Offence. In the previous two, Gurudev is talking about Mahaprabhu's Shikshastakam, the first verse, Cheto Darpana Marjanam. Then the second verse, Nam Namakari Bahuda. And now, avoiding offence. Namaikam yasya vache smarana pata gatam shrotra mulam gatam va shuddham vashuddha varnam vyavahita rahitam taratyeva satyam tached deha dravina janata lobha pasanda madhye nikshiptam syanna pala janakam sigram ivatra vipra. From the Padma Purana. The scriptures explain, if anyone once hears, chants, or remembers the Lord's divine name without any offense, they will be delivered from material existence immediately. If someone maintains their material connections and pursues mundane ends while they chant the Lord's holy name, then the result of their chanting does not bear fruit quickly. It gradually comes to them. This verse gives us necessary consciousness about our practicing life by showing us that our offensive mentality is our only obstacle in chanting of the holy name, and that until we can avoid all offences, we will not get the proper result of chanting the holy name. No one should be hopeless after hearing this caution. In this verse, it is indirectly expressed that even if we chant with offences, we will eventually get a good result from the chanting. Nam aparad yuktanam namanyeva harantyagam. Padma Purana, Svarga Kanda 48-49. If we are chanting Nam aparad, chanting the holy name with offense, we should never stop our chanting, because the holy name himself will remove our offenses by his divine influence. It is necessary to eagerly chant the Lord's holy name and always be hopeful. We can always be hopeful because the Lord's holy name is always joyful and merciful, like Krishna himself. In this way, we can understand Mahaprabhu's teaching that if you want to chant the Lord's holy name purely and fully satisfy the Lord through your chanting, then you will have to chant the Lord's holy name constantly without making offences. Krishna will be happy with us when we can practice Krishna consciousness and chant his holy name without offence. If we have love for Krishna, then we must try to satisfy Krishna by practicing and chanting without offence. In the Padma Purana, the 10 offences which must be avoided to chant the Lord's holy name purely are explained. We have already published those offences with the original verses, and whenever anyone has taken initiation, we have given them that book and requested them read these offences, memorize them, and avoid them. That is necessary for everyone. Jai Srila Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj Gurudev Ki Jai.
I always remember Gurudev's instruction to beg for forgiveness for the Panchatattva
Yes,
before chanting.
indeed.
It's a very nice instruction, trying to take to heart and embody.
Yes, to invoke the mercy of the Panchatattva. It's through them, and Gurudev said it's through them that the holy name is coming into this world and to us. So it's critical, it's imperative that they are invoked when we go to chant the holy name beforehand.
And also, if you analyse and dissect beg for forgiveness, it counteracts the 10 offences we're potentially all making when we're chanting the holy name, and to really beg and petition like a beggar.
Yes, yes. Ultimately, that's what it is. At first, you may have to practice to beg. You may have to beg to learn to beg.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it is that. Yes. If we look at the example of the Goswamis, they're falling at Mahaprabhu's feet and they're begging. Not that we can just imitate it or get some emotional wave and, we have whatever and try and be somewhat honest. But yeah, we're cultivating that intensity of emotion ultimately. And it's connected with the desire needed, the lolyam needed to make spiritual progress, that intense inner desire.
Yeah, I'll remember that next time the rounds seem like a chore.
Yeah. They seem like a chore until maybe one day they don't.
Yeah.
Who's going to sing?
Hari Haraye Namah Krishna Yadavaya Namaha.
Yadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Namaha. Gopala Govinda Ram Shri Madhusudana. Giridhari Gopinath Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Chandra.
Jai Sakarikaya Shishi Guru Gauranga Sundara
Jai. Jai.
Shri Chaitanya Saraswati Acharya Vrinda ki
Jai.
Jai Paslavati Sundar Govinda Deva Goswami Maharaj ki Jai Paslavati Lokam Sri Goswami Maharaj ki Jai Jami Paslavati Siddhanta Saraswati Prabhu ki
Jai.
Shri Rupananda Bhagavati ki Jai Shri Chaitanya Charitamrita ki Jai Shri Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami Prabhu ki Jai Shri A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki Jai Anati Koti Vaishnava ki Jai Vrinda Devi Bhakti Devi ki Jai Sri Hari Rama Sankirtan ki Jai Gadadhar Pandita ki Jai Hare Krishna ki Jai Gaur Premanande
Saraswati
Hari
ki Jai.
Bol